I went ahead and printed out the umbrella design, and then I trimmed it to within like 1/4 of an inch of all of the crosshairs on here on the outside edges. And if you don't have an embroidery program that can print, you can download Embrilliance Express. It is free and it will allow you to print. You can't save or do anything else with it. You're supposed to use it just for their BX fonts, but it will let you print. So this goes right here, just like this. And I have a snowman sticker. And if you have a Brother or a Baby Lock machine, most of them, if they have a camera system, will have the ability to read snowman technology. There's a special ink on here that tells the machine exactly how to rotate the design and where it goes. So what I normally do is I'll do the printout and then I will fold it over in half. I pre-fold these back and forth to make sure that they're easy to fold. And then I fold it in half again. And then I will take the snowman sticker and I will put it right in, let's see, this is hard because it's sideways. So this is the top of the design right here. Okay. So I will take the snowman and put it so that the bottom corner that is tucked just under the bottom corner of the design right there. Okay, so that quadrant, that bottom quadrant is on there. I think this is going to work out well because, but it's just confusing because the pattern's sideways, but it has these registration stitches right here that go right there. I'm going to skip this stitch line because I wanted to background quilt the entire topper before I did the embroidery design. Then I don't want to stitch out this registration line right here because this registration line is supposed to print on your stabilizer, and then you would line up the corner of the white right here and you would not yet have your borders on it. Well, I already have my borders on it, so I will be skipping over this stitch. But this stitch, you can line your design up right on the edge so that the line is even with the seam line of the border and the white background. That's what I did with that. The only other drawback to doing it this way is you will see the stitches on the backing from the embroidery, but it's going to be on a table and I don't really care about that. Okay, so if you do not have one and you have a multi-needle, because I'm going to do this on the multi-needle, I have a dime magnetic hoop. And I love this thing for the multi-needle. Just absolutely love it. All you have to do is get an idea of center, is all you need to do. Where's my mat? I'm going to put my dime hoop mat out here. I like these big, heavy, dark lines, okay? Now I'm going to take the hoop and eyeball it. You guys, I'm eyeballing center, all right? It might be exact, it might not. But the point is that I'm trying to get an idea of where center is because that's where the snowman needs to go, is right there. So I'm going to stitch this. So all I do is put my finger on it and then kind of come down and put my finger on center and make sure the mat, and now I can see the edge of it is lined up. I think that's fine. I think that's going to work out just fine. There, it's hooped. This is awesome. It's ready to go. Okay, I have the A arm installed on the multi-needle and folding this over, and I have it so that the majority of the topper is hanging over the front and the side as opposed to being shoved up in the back. That's just kind of a consideration you want to do. So I sent this over wirelessly using the Brother Design Database Transfer. So I'm going to touch the wireless button. And there's my umbrella right there. And set. Okay, and I'm going to go to Edit End. I don't need to do any rotation or size or anything with it right now, so I'm going to hit Edit End. All right, so the first one I'm going to do is going to be the lime green umbrella. And I'm going to touch the button with the 3 thread spools so I can tell it which stitch to do. Now, as I said, I'm not going to stitch out that registration stitch. I don't want that. So I'm going to touch the do not stitch button. Okay, I don't want it to stitch that, so I'm going to touch the do not stitch button on that. And the next one is the umbrella, and that's the placement line for the umbrella. I want that to be in that lime green, and that's on spool number 1. And then for the tack down line, before it stitches that, I want it to stop. So I'm going to put up my hand and tell it to stop, and then I want it to stitch in green, spool number 1. And then, so while it's stopped, I'm going to iron this down onto my topper, and then I don't need to trim away or anything. Now, if you don't have pre-cut pieces, before you go to the next stitch, you want to tell it to stop again so you can trim the fabric away. But I have pre-cut pieces, so I don't need to do that. So stitch number 4 is the pole. Is that a pole on an umbrella? I want that to be gray. I'm going to need another thread. I'm going to put gray on spool number 10. Okay. And the outline final satin stitching for the umbrella will be on 1. And the raindrops are going to be spool number 2, which is a baby blue. And then the handle is also going to be the lime, which is spool number 1. Okay, so now I am all finished telling it what colors to use. I'm going to tell it okay. And I'm going to touch the snowman and see if it'll find it. Tell it okay. The camera is right under here. It sees it. I can see the little red 8 right there. Okay, it says remove the embroidery positioning mark. It found it, and it's going to put it exactly where I want it. I'll just pick this up and tell it okay. And we are ready to go. I'm going to hit embroidery and lock and go. And it's stopped, so I can iron on my applique. And here's the beauty of the multi-needle. Now I don't have to have my hands on it at all for the rest of the 10 minutes it's going to take to stitch out. I touch lock and go. That looks amazing. I really like that. Okay, I'm just going to hit OK so that the light quits blinking. Take it out of the hoop and rehoop it. I'm going to cut those jump threads. I'll be back in a minute. All right, so for those who don't have the snowman system, I put a dime target sticker right there, and it just is a crosshair, and it has an arrow that points up to the top. And on this machine, what you can do, most machines will have some way for you, hopefully for you to be able to drop a crosshair or to find center. So on this machine right here, there's a little sewing machine. You can touch that. I'm going to tell it okay. And it's going to take a picture, and it has a crosshair, a gray crosshair right there on the camera, and you can see if I move it up, there we go. Can you see the little the target sticker? I'm going to move it back. There we go. That's good. One that way. Come down a little bit. Aha, whoop, too far. And so that's how you center and find center using a target sticker. Okay, so to get rid of this, and you can even drop a crosshair by touching that needle right there with the plus sign. See, it has the crosshair, now you can see it. And I've got it dead center of that target sticker. Okay, so now I'm going to touch the machine button again and make everything go away. I'm going to remove my target sticker. And now here's another beauty of the multi-needle. I'm going to go back into my 3 spools of thread, and all I need to do, I don't need to change anything now except for the color that's going to stitch around the outside of the umbrella. And this corner I want to do the turquoise one, so that is going to, everything that is spool number 1 is going to switch to spool number 3, because that's the color I want to use. So I'm going to touch number 1, go to 3, number 2, go to 3. I shouldn't call them 1, 2, 3. I'm not stitching stitch number 1, which is the registration. And then that to number 3, and that one to number 3. And tell it okay, and embroidery, lock, and go. Go to the ironing board. Okay, all finished. All I need now is to bind it, and it'll be done. This turned out adorable. Oh my goodness, this is so cute. I'm going to bind my topper the regular way I would bind a quilt. And to do that, I have cut 2.5-inch strips. Now you can certainly cut more narrow strips than 2.5. Some people like a more narrow binding. I do my binding all by machine, and so I like a little bit extra width so that when I do the fold over, I'm sure to catch it in the back. And because I'll be sewing from the front kind of blind. I've cut 5 2.5-inch strips, and I'm going to put them right sides facing at a 90-degree angle, with just a little bit, maybe 1/4 of an inch sticking over on the top and 1/4 of an inch over here. So this is what it looks like this. So you can see a little bit from either side. You can draw a line if you want. If I have diagonal seam tape here, so this is very handy. And I am going to stitch a diagonal line from the V where these two meet straight diagonally toward from left to right and end in that V. And the beauty of this is diagonal seam tape from Cluck Cluck Sew. I have it in my Amazon store. It's very, very handy for quilters. So I am turning this so that the needle starts right in that V, And I have the bottom V coming out right here where they cross. Let me get high enough so you can see. I think you can see that. So I'm putting them together so that one is over just a little bit, they're right sides together, and it sticks out, like I said, about 1/4 of an inch on each side. And I'm going to sew directly, let me move this so you can get more light. I'm going to sew and keep this red line from the diagonal seam tape directly on the V of the bottom one. Just like that. So I've sewn a diagonal line. Now I take the one that is wrong side up to me and I flip it so that I'm looking at the right side. Just do one little flip. So I'm looking at the right side, and I'm going to do the same thing again. And then I take these, start in the V and end in the V. And by the V, I mean right here. There's a V, or a little mountaintop if you want, upside down V. That's all of them pieced together, and now I'm going to break them apart. And I'm going to just take my shears and I'm going to cut these 1/4 of an inch approximately. My stitch length is too big. Outside of the stitch line and cut off the points. It doesn't have to be exact. And now I'm going to go and iron it so that the seams are flat, and then I'm going to iron it in half. I have ironed my seams flat. They are not pressed open, they're pressed to one side, okay? And then I press this in half. I'm going to start in the middle of one side. You don't want to start on a corner, you want to start in the middle. And I'm going to start about 6 inches or so from the corner, and I'm going to leave about a 8 to 10 inch tail. You want to take the raw edges and put them toward the edge so that the folded edge is in toward the middle. I've got a tail right there, so I'm just holding it. You can pin if you want, you don't have to. So I'm just going to do a straight stitch. This is a 1/4 inch foot, and I am going to stop stitching 1/4 inch from the bottom. And sometimes it's handy to just take a pin and mark approximately, we should mark 1/4 of an inch. I can eyeball it, I've been doing this so long. If you need to, you can take a little measuring guide and see your 1/4 inch and measure. So I'm just going to put a little pin there, and I'm just going to start, I'm going to back stitch just a little bit. A lot of people use a walking foot for this so the fabrics move at the same speed. I'm not going to bother with that. I'm going to pull the pin and take 2 more stitches, and that's it. And now I'm going to hit my back stitch and cut the thread. Then I'm going to take the binding, and I'm laying this out flat, and I'm going to take it and fold it over so that now I have a straight line all the way across of the raw edges. See that? So it was straight like this. I'm just going to fold it over to my right. And then I'm going to crease it with my fingers. You can put a straight edge. That's very handy if you want. And then fold this back over. So that it is straight. I'm going to pull my straight edge. Fold that tight. I'm holding everything tightly. You can pin if you want. I'm going to start just a little bit down from the corner and go backwards first. And I'm off. That technique I had showed you where you have thumb under, fingers on top is a great way to make sure that everything goes under the needle at the same speed. I'm going to line all of my raw edges up. I'm going to hold it in the back to help guide it. This is a great way to make sure if your backing is exactly the right size, but your top might be a little bit shy, you can kind of trick it a little bit because you're going to hide that shortness with that 1/4 inch seam allowance on the binding. And I'm going to continue to go all the way around. I'll stop 1/4 inch from this corner and go all the way around. And I'm going to stop. So I started over here. I'm going to leave a gap of, I don't know, 10 or 12 inches, about that much. And I'm going to put a pin to tell me where to stop. Okay, I'm going to show you how I do a diagonal seam binding finish. So just like I've got diagonal seams all over this, I want a diagonal seam binding finish. So I have my 2 tails, okay? I'm going to take the longer one a little bit, and it doesn't matter how much. You need about 1 hand worth, 4 or 5 fingers worth right here is what you need. I'm just going to cut this, okay? You're going to take your cut end and you're going to open it up flat. So here's the end I just cut. I'm keeping this folded closed. I have about I can span my 4 fingers. That's probably wide enough. Okay. So I cut off the end of it. I'm going to take my edge and I'm opening up flat and putting it perpendicular to the one that I just cut off. I'm going to take that edge. You can eyeball this, but for those of you who need a measurement, and I'm going to back it up into the opening about 1/4 inch. See that? So I cut this off, I laid it out flat, I set it right up here. It's my measuring guide. And I backed it over toward the opening about 1/4 inch. Now I'm going to take this one, I'm going to lay it over flat, and where this edge is, I'm going to cut it. No measuring, okay? So this ends up all the scrap that I had from those 5 strips. Now, I probably need a little bit more room here. I don't think I left my opening big enough. Just a second. I'm going to open this up just a little bit. Okay. All right, so I have my 2 tails. The one in my left hand. I'm going to open it up flat and lay it wrong side down, right side up. Okay? This one in my right hand, I'm looking at the back side of it. I'm going to flip it all the way around away from me 1 time. I'll do that again. This one, left hand, open it up flat, lay it down, don't twist it or anything, just lay it wrong side down, right side up. the one that's this one in my right hand, I'm looking at the wrong side of it. I'm going to flip it away from me. I'm going to flip that wrong side away from me and go one full revolution. And now I'm going to put my corners together and pin. And I'm going to lay this out flat. I'm matching the short edge of this one on my left to the long edge of this one on my right. And I'm just going to pin this one just to kind of hold it for right now, that corner. And now I want to get these upper edges even. And I'm going to pin this corner down here. Whoa. That just jumped out, didn't it? I just want it flat. Okay, I'm going to take this. Now, I'm going to sew, just like before, diagonally, top left to bottom right. There's the bottom corner. I'm putting it on the center line of the diagonal seam tape. Everything is smooth and flat. It's kind of fiddly, but it's okay. Keeping my eye on that thing. It helps to draw a line or... Okay. All right. Remove your pins. And before you cut, you want to pull it straight and make sure it's going to fit. And that's going to be perfect. So I can come in here now and cut my 1/4 inch, cut off the tip. I got threads everywhere. And now I'm going to sew it. If you get a little tiny bubble, don't worry about it. You won't if you use a walking foot. So I got a little bitty crease right there, but when you open it up, you can't see it. And that's what matters, is you cannot see that crease. So that's fine, because it only creased this back top piece of fabric of the fold and not the bottom piece, so you can't even see it. Now I'm going to take it to the ironing board. I'm going to iron this out flat and make sure to iron in my 45-degree mitered angles. I have some binding clips. These are Wonder clips, and they're great. When you're just starting out, you can do this. I'm gonna fold this over on the back to hide that edge, and you want to take your binding clip and just clip it. I generally don't use these anymore because it's easier for me not to, but I'm just going to show you in case you have never done it. So, you don't want to take the word of the binding clip. You're going to want to make sure that this is folded over to capture it. We're going to sew blind from the front by stitching in the ditch. I recommend that you have a bobbin thread that matches the color of the binding strip, and then whatever top thread you want, and if your tension is right, you won't see it. And I took a piece of the extra that was cut off from the binding strips when I finished it, and made a little triangle, and I will sew this in right here, and I will just kind of put on there Becky 2022 so that I have a little label. It's very handy to do. So I just folded that into the miter it wanted to go in for a nice clean finish on the back. I'm going to put a pin in there to hold it. Right there. and then fold this over. So there's my little, that's how the label's gonna look. And if you've got a real big one, you can take some steam-a-seam and close down that piece if you want. You don't have to. Okay, I need a bobbin thread that's the same color as my binding. I found a sulky 30 weight that is absolutely perfect to match with this aqua blue fabric. Isn't that great? I love finding perfect stuff like that. That's amazing. So I'm just going to fold this over as tight as I can. And I'm going to put it so that the needle, let me zoom in, is going to just hit right outside of the binding so that it stitches in the blue. And I'm not going to back stitch at the beginning, but I will go over it about 3 or 4 stitches when I'm finished. And this is how I bind my quilts. I know there'll be a lot of pearl clutching on that, but I want this done today. So life is short, y'all. When I got this machine, this Brother PQ 1500, my binding skills just, it went crazy. So good and so easy. This is what this machine is made for. Now I'm getting up to the white part on the cornerstone, so I'm going to pull this as tight as possible. I'm going to pull the binding as tight as possible so that if it decides to roll back, it'll roll back over that blue thread. Y'all, I'd rather go get a root canal than bind by hand. Ooh. I'll show you how it's looking. Look at that. That will work. I love it. It's not even between here. There might be a little bit that it's off. I don't care. It's on the back. And you want to feel it with your thumb and make sure that that binding is pushed over so you don't leave any blank spots. I've fixed my share until I perfected this method. Now when I get about 6 inches away, I fold this up. And I'll take a pin and put it in to hold it. And then I'll get all these extra threads tucked in. And then fold this over so that the miter looks good. Okay, that's fine. And then I'll fold this like that. Okay. I also take a third pin and I'm going to pin it right here. And the reason I pin it right there is to hold the miter in place once I pull this. So I'm holding, my goal is to hold this in place and to hold this in place right here because I'm going to pull the pin and I'm going to be stitching away. So that's the way I do that, like that. And then I promptly stick my finger in that pin. Stop with my needle down in the corner, one more stitch right there. Needle down. I'm going to turn it. Take a stitch or two. Don't want to hit that pin. All finished. It is bound and it is beautiful. Look at that. You look up close, you can't even see that. That looks amazing. Got cute little miters in my corners. Then on this back, here's what it looks like. Y'all, that's fine. I am totally fine with that. Okay, you guys, we're all finished. All right, this is adorable. Perfect little April showers. I'm glad I got it done in time. Might get a little rain today. This was a lot of fun and I really enjoyed it. And if you're new to quilting, I hope you joined me and I hope you learned a little something. And if you're new to embroidery, I hope you learned a little something too. So we'll do this again in a couple of weeks for the May topper, all right? We'll talk to you soon. Go sew something. Bye.